Hi, my name is Christian Maynard. I'm working on my PhD at Washington State University in sociology. I study cannabis legalization and adolescent use. Today, we'll look at a recent video by conservative commentator Ben Shapiro on his views around the recent marijuana rescheduling.
President Trump is now expected to sign an executive order reclassifying marijuana. I think this is a horrible move. I think that marijuana is, in fact, a massive detriment to young people all across America. I've held this view pretty consistently for a couple of decades because it seemed to me that all of the talk about how marijuana was completely harmless, non-addictive, and all the rest of it was just not borne out by the science. Nor did it seem to me to be borne out by the anecdotal evidence, considering that I know a number of...
All right, let's take a pause. First, we should acknowledge that the support for cannabis is nearly at an all-time high. I mean, we recently hit upwards of 70% of Americans supporting cannabis legalization. As you can see, this support has steadily climbed, even after legalization. In terms of some of the medical research around this, I think looking at chronic pain is a good example, and specifically looking at opioid use and the effects of cannabis legalization. The study, Medical Cannabis and Opioid Recipient Among Adults with Chronic Pain. In this study, authors found that the New York State Prescription Monitoring Program was associated with a decrease in opioid use. Another study, Recreational Cannabis Laws and Fills of Pain Prescriptions in the Privately Insured. We know how Ben likes private insurance. These authors found that recreational cannabis legalization was associated with a decrease in opiate fills among the commercially insured adults in the U.S. Let's continue.
Young people who have essentially gotten addicted to pot, especially because the pot strains that are currently available have much higher THC content than the pot strains even when I was a teenager. The president, though, knows that it is a popular idea.
Let's talk about the cannabis potency briefly. According to DEA data, the potency for THC confiscated in seizures has gone up. This is correct. However, a lot of the cannabis that is being sold at dispensaries in this weird quasi-regulated market is mislabeled. So this study, Uncomfortably High Testing Reveals Inflated THC Potency on Retail Cannabis Labels, published 2023, authors found that the average observed THC potency was 23% lower than the lowest label reported value and 35% lower than the highest reported value. And 70% of the samples were more than 15% off, meaning that the cannabis that you see at dispensaries are likely overinflated, and many of the more scary numbers are overinflated. Let's continue.
To reclassify marijuana, because the sort of myth-making around the non-harmfulness of marijuana has become so strong. The order would reclassify marijuana from a Schedule I drug, which the DEA defines as having no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse, to a Schedule III drug, which the DEA defines as having a moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence. I do not see the evidence that marijuana has a moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence. That reclassification could have implications for research of marijuana or use for medical purposes. President Trump said that he was considering reclassification very strongly. He said, we're considering that because a lot of people want to see it, the reclassification, because it leads to tremendous amounts of research that can't be done unless you reclassify it. So we're looking at that very strongly. Okay, if we really believe the reclassification of marijuana in order to do research on marijuana is the thing, I am skeptical that that is what this is about.
That is a huge thing that researchers that I have worked with deal with. As it stands currently, it is very hard to conduct research where you have the plant material and you're conducting like laboratory-based experiments, maybe giving cannabis to some participants to conduct a research study. That is pretty difficult. Right now, a lot of researchers will, people in this study have to go get it themselves, Or if you can get access to cannabis, it is often lower quality. It often doesn't reflect the market. For example, it might not include vape products. It might not include RSO oil. It might not include all the THC drinks that we got now. So I would push back on this and say, yes, the research side of things is pretty important here. And there's a lot of elements that are being studied, such as the uses for sleep apnea, or insomnia. Someone who's working on a study around cannabis and awe. Let's continue.
I've yet to see a major medical issue other than perhaps stem cell research that has broken into the public view with regard to should we do more research on it or not. Certainly not with regard to marijuana. A year ago, President Trump had suggested his return to the White House would usher in a new era for marijuana, making it easier for adults to access safe products and giving states greater leeway to pursue legalization. He had started talking about this in 2024, of course, when he was running for re-election.
He started talking about this long before that. So, 1990, Trump is quoted in the Miami Herald as saying, "We're losing badly the war on drugs. You have to legalize drugs to win that war. You have to take the profit away from these drug czars." In addition, when he was running in 2016...
Oh, they're asking me these questions in GQ, and this one's tailored sweatpants. They're okay with me. Legalized marijuana is always a very difficult question for medicinal purposes, for medical purposes. Absolutely, it's fine. We have to help people.
And this was back in 2015 when he conducted this interview.
This seems to me a bad move. According to the Kalshi markets, it is now a near certainty that there will be a rescheduling of marijuana before 2028. Unlikely, according to the Kalshi markets, they're a sponsor of the show, that marijuana will be rescheduled this year, but...
So you're railing against cannabis legalization, or not even cannabis legalization, railing against cannabis rescheduling, but you're promoting a prediction market, which seems like gambling with an extra step.
Before the end of 2026, 82% shot in the prediction markets. Before 2028, 89% shot in the prediction. That's what we need. We need more young people enervated by pot. I can't see how that would go wrong in any possible way. And the sort of short-term thinking, temporary payoffs to motivated constituencies. I mean, there is a downside, which is that people high on pot don't tend to vote in massive numbers.
I think you should examine the history around cannabis legalization and the fact that most of the way that it got legalized was through voting, ballot initiatives. Hardly, and it wasn't until later on that was legislators doing this. Am I surprised by Ben's take? No. But I do think that cannabis legalization offers the possibility for a smaller government in the sense of a smaller police force when it comes to drug enforcement, at least around cannabis policy. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support my work, please click the like button, get subscribed, comment something below. And if you'd like to support me directly, I do have a Patreon. Have a wonderful day.